Kim Taemin sat at his small desk in the Earth Diplomatic Corps building, staring at the message that had just appeared on his screen. He read it 3 times, but the words still did not make sense to him. The Valeth Empire wanted him. Not his boss, not the famous ambassadors, not the military leaders. They had asked for Kim Taemin by name. Taemin was nobody special. He worked in cultural affairs, which meant he helped organize small events and tried to solve problems between humans and aliens. Most people in the building did not even know his name. He had been doing this job for 8 years, and his biggest success was helping some human farmers get along with their Valeth neighbors on a colony world. That had been 5 years ago. Taemin remembered the trip well. The humans and Valeth on. The colony world had been fighting over water rights. Both groups were angry and scared. The local government had sent lawyers and negotiators, but nothing worked. Everyone kept shouting and no one listened. When Taemin arrived, he did something different. Instead of talking about laws and contracts, he sat with both groups. He asked them to tell him their stories. He listened to the human farmers talk about their families and their hopes for the future. He listened to the Valeth families explain their traditions and their fears. It took 3 weeks, but slowly both sides started to understand each other. They found a solution that worked for everyone. The humans got the water they needed for their crops. The Valeth got respect for their sacred sites near the river. Everyone was happy. Taemin thought that was the end of it. He wrote his report and went back to his regular work. He never expected anyone to remember what happened on that small colony world. Now, somehow, the Valeth Queen herself wanted to see him. Taemin! His boss, Ambassador Park Ji-woo, called from across the office. Get in here right now! Taemin walked to the ambassador's office. Park Ji-woo was a tall man with gray hair who always looked worried. Today, he looked more worried than usual. Explain this to me, Park said, holding up a golden tablet covered in alien writing. The Valeth Empire has requested you personally for a diplomatic mission to their capital world. You, not me, not Admiral Kim, not anyone important. You. Taemin looked at the tablet. The writing was beautiful, flowing like water. He could read some Valeth, but not enough to understand the formal language. I do not know why they want me, Taemin said honestly. Maybe they remember the colony world situation? Park laughed, but it was not a happy sound. That little farming dispute? Taemin, the Valeth Empire rules over 300 star systems. They have been around for thousands of years. Their queen does not personally invite humans over farming problems. Then what does she want? I have no idea. But when the most powerful alien empire in this sector asks for someone by name, we do not say no. Park stood up and walked to the window. Outside they could see the busy streets of New Geneva, where humans and aliens work together. You leave tomorrow? Taemin felt his stomach drop. Tomorrow? But I have not prepared anything. I do not have gifts or documents, or the Valeth provided a ship. They said to bring only yourself and anything you consider personally important. Park turned back to him. What could you possibly have that the Valeth Empire wants? Taemin thought about this question all day. What did he have that was special? His apartment was small and simple. His clothes were ordinary. His work was not important compared to the military officers or scientists. That evening, he packed a small bag with basic clothes and supplies. As he was closing the bag, he saw his grandfather's wooden flute sitting on the shelf. His grandfather had carved it by hand when Taemin was a child. It was made from a tree that had grown on his grandfather's farm in Korea. The old man had spent months carving tiny birds and flowers into the wood. Music is the language of the heart, his grandfather used to say. When words fail, music speaks. Taemin had learned to play simple songs on the flute, but he was not very good. Still, he carried it with him sometimes. It reminded him of his grandfather's gentle hands and patient smile. He almost left it behind. What use was a simple wooden flute in the court of an alien empire? But something made him put it in his bag. The next morning, Taemin stood at the spaceport looking up at the Valeth ship. It was beautiful, made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow from within. The shape reminded him of a seashell, curved and smooth. Other humans had come to see him off. Admiral Lee Dong-hyuk shook his hand firmly. Remember, "You represent all of humanity up there," he said. "Do not let them think we are weak." Dr. Yoon Soo-jin, the head of medical research, gave him a small device. "If you get a chance, show them this scanner. Maybe we can arrange some technology trade." Trade Commissioner Han Kyung-soo handed him a datapad. "These are our latest trade proposals. The Valeth have resources we need. Everyone had advice for him. Everyone had things they wanted him to accomplish." Taemin nodded and smiled, but inside he felt confused. They all talked like this was about business or military power, but something told him this meeting was about something else entirely. The Valeth ship captain was tall and thin, with blue-green skin that sparkled like jewels. She spoke perfect English. "You are Kim Taemin?" "Yes, I am Captain Velthara. Her Majesty is eager to meet you." She looked at the crowd of important humans around Taemin. Only Taemin comes aboard. As the ship lifted off from Earth, Taemin looked down at his home planet getting smaller and smaller. He touched the wooden flute in his pocket. Whatever the Valeth Queen wanted, he hoped he could give it to her. He just wished he knew what it was. The journey to the Valeth capital world took 3 days. During that time, Captain Velthara was polite but distant. She answered his questions about Valeth culture and history, but she did not talk about why the Queen wanted to see him. "Her Majesty will explain everything," was all she would say. When they finally arrived at the capital world, Taemin pressed his face to the window. The planet was covered in huge crystal cities that reached up into the clouds. The buildings sang with musical tones that created harmony across the entire world. "Welcome to the Palace of Echoes," Captain Velthara said. "Your life is about to change, Kim Taemin." The Palace of Echoes was unlike anything Taemin had ever seen. The walls were made of living crystal that grew in impossible shapes, twisting and curving like frozen music. Every surface reflected light in different colors, and the whole building hummed with soft, beautiful sounds. Captain Velthara led him through long hallways filled with treasures from across the galaxy. Taemin saw weapons that glowed with energy, machines that moved without making noise, and sculptures made from materials he could not name. Everything was arranged perfectly, like a museum of conquered worlds. "These are gifts," Velthara explained when she saw him looking. "Every species that joins the Empire brings tribute to show respect to the Queen." They walked past displays from hundreds of different worlds. Each one tried to show the best their people could create. The weapons were sharp and deadly. The machines were complex and powerful. The art was grand and impressive, but something about the displays made Taemin feel sad. They did not look like gifts between friends. They looked like payments made by people who were afraid. "Has the Queen seen all of these?" Taemin asked. "Her Majesty examines every tribute personally," Velthara said. Her voice sounded strange when she said this, like she was worried about something. They came to a large room where other humans were waiting. Taemin recognized them from Earth. Admiral Lee Dong-hyuk stood near a display of human weapons. He was talking to a Valeth official about military cooperation. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin was showing her medical devices to another alien. Trade Commissioner Han Kyung-soo had spread out charts and datapads, explaining Earth's resources to anyone who would listen. "Taemin!" Admiral Lee called out. "There you are! Come help us explain our defense systems." "Actually," Velthara said smoothly, "Her Majesty wishes to see Taemin immediately." The other humans looked surprised. Dr. Yoon frowned. "Should not we all meet her together? We are the official Earth delegation." "The Queen's wishes are clear," Velthara said. "She will see Kim Taemin alone first." Taemin felt uncomfortable as his fellow humans stared at him. He could see they were confused and maybe a little angry. Why would the alien queen want to see the least important person first? Velthara led him away from the treasure halls and up a long stairway that spiraled through the heart of the palace. The crystal walls here were darker, and the musical sounds were softer, almost like whispers. "I must warn you about something," Velthara said as they climbed. "Her Majesty has been different lately." "Different how?" Velthara stopped walking and looked at him with large golden eyes. "She has stopped accepting tribute. She dismissed half of her advisors. She spends most of her time alone in her chambers, surrounded by gifts she will not look at." The court physicians think she is becoming ill. What kind of illness? We do not know. Her body is healthy, but her spirit seems to be fading. She says the palace is full of shadows and that every gift carries darkness with it. Velthara started walking again. Some of us hoped that human medical technology might help her. They reached a door made of the same singing crystal as the rest of the palace, but this one was dark and silent. Velthara touched it gently, and it opened without a sound. Her Majesty, she called softly. The human you requested has arrived. The room beyond was huge but felt empty. The walls curved up into a dome covered with stars that moved slowly across the crystal's surface. In the center of the room sat a figure that took Taimin's breath away. Queen Ashkara was tall and elegant, with skin that shifted between blue and silver. Patterns of light moved across her skin like living tattoos, but the lights were dim and flickering. Around her were scattered hundreds of gifts, jewels, weapons, machines, art pieces, all thrown aside like broken toys. The queen looked up when Taimin entered. Her eyes were large and dark, like pools of deep water. When she saw him, the patterns on her skin brightened slightly. "You are Kim Taimin," she said. Her voice was musical, like several people singing together in harmony. "Yes, Your Majesty." Taimin bowed the way Velthara had taught him during the journey. "Do not bow," the queen said tiredly. "I have seen enough bowing. Come closer." Taimin walked carefully between the scattered treasures. Some of them were still glowing with power. Others made soft sounds as he passed. The queen watched him approach with an expression he could not read. "Your people have brought me many things," she said, gesturing to the treasures around her. "Weapons to make me feel their strength, medicines to show me their knowledge, machines to prove their cleverness. All very impressive." She picked up a glowing sword and held it for a moment before setting it aside. The light patterns on her skin grew dimmer when she touched it. "But you," she said, looking directly at him. "You brought something different. Show me." Taimin reached into his pocket and pulled out his grandfather's wooden flute. It looked so small and plain compared to all the amazing treasures around them. He felt embarrassed to offer such a simple thing to the ruler of a vast empire. "This is all I brought," he said honestly. "It belonged to my grandfather. He made it himself." Queen Ashkara held out her hand. When Taimin placed the flute in her palm, something incredible happened. The patterns on her skin suddenly blazed with bright, warm light. Colors he had never seen before flowed across her face and arms like sunrise over water. The queen stared at the simple wooden flute with wonder. She touched the tiny carved birds and flowers with one finger, tracing each detail carefully. "This remembers," she whispered, and her voice was full of amazement. "This remembers being alive. It remembers the hands that shaped it with love, not ambition. It remembers songs played under starlight and laughter shared between generations." Tears began to fall from her large dark eyes, glowing like liquid silver as they touched the floor. "How long has it been?" she said, still staring at the flute. "Since someone brought me something made with love instead of fear?" Taimin did not know what to say. He watched the alien queen hold his grandfather's simple gift like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Around them, all the scattered treasures seemed to fade into shadow compared to the warm light coming from her skin. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "are you all right?" She looked up at him, and he saw something in her eyes that he recognized. It was the same look he had seen in the human farmers and Valeth families on the colony world 5 years ago. It was the look of someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for too long, someone who needed to be understood. "No," Queen Ashkara said simply. "I am not all right, but you might be the first person in a very long time who can help me remember what all right feels like." Queen Ashkara stood up slowly, still holding the wooden flute. The light patterns on her skin had changed completely. Instead of the dim, sad colors from before, she now glowed with soft golden light that made the whole room feel warmer. "Come with me," she said to Taimin. "I want to show you something." She led him to another part of her chambers where the other human gifts were displayed on pedestals. Each one was placed carefully under special lights, like exhibits in a museum. But the queen did not look happy about them. "Your Admiral Lee brought me this," she said, pointing to a sleek energy weapon. When she moved her hand near it, her skin patterns immediately darkened to deep blue and black. "It is very advanced, very deadly. I can feel the fear that drove its creation." She moved to the next pedestal. Dr. Yoon's medical scanner, precise and powerful. Again, her skin darkened. Made to impress, to show superiority, to gain favor. At the third pedestal sat Trade Commissioner Han's data tablets, displaying Earth's resources and trade proposals. When the Queen looked at them, her patterns turned an ugly gray color. "Even these numbers carry weight," she said sadly. "They speak of hunger for more, of never having enough, of seeing everything as something to be owned or traded." Tae-min watched her reaction to each gift. It was like she was feeling sick every time she got near them. "Your Majesty, I do not understand. These are good things. The weapon could protect your people. The medical scanner could save lives. The trade agreements could help both our worlds." "You think like most beings in the galaxy?" the Queen said, walking back to where she had left his grandfather's flute. When she picked it up again, her skin immediately brightened. "You see only what these objects can do, but I see why they were made." She held up the flute and the energy weapon side by side. "This weapon exists because your people fear being conquered. Every line of its design screams, 'We are dangerous, do not hurt us.' This flute exists because your grandfather wanted to create beauty and share joy. Do you see the difference?" Tae-min looked at the two objects, one gleaming with alien technology, one simple carved wood. Slowly, he began to understand. "You can feel the emotions that went into making things?" "Not just me. All Valeth can sense the emotional intent behind created objects. It is part of who we are." The Queen sat down heavily among the scattered treasures. "For 3,000 years, every species that joined our empire has brought us gifts. And for 3,000 years, every single gift has carried the same emotions: fear, greed, ambition, desire for power." She picked up a jeweled crown from a nearby pile. Her skin immediately turned dark purple. This crown was made to impress us with wealth. The beings who created it stripped their world bare to gather these gems, hoping to buy our favor. She set it down and picked up a complex machine. Again, her colors dimmed. "This device was built to show technological advancement, but I can feel the desperation of its makers, their terror that we would destroy them if they seemed too primitive." Tae-min looked around the room at all the scattered treasures. Hundreds of gifts from hundreds of worlds, and every one of them carried negative emotions that hurt the Queen to touch. "How do you bear it?" he asked. "I do not anymore," she admitted. "At first, when I was young, I thought I could ignore the darkness in the gifts. I told myself that good intentions could come from fearful hearts, but centuries of handling objects made from terror and greed. It poisoned something inside me." She stood up and walked to a large window that looked out over the Crystal City. The patterns on her skin were swirling slowly, like she was thinking hard about something. "My advisors believe I am going insane. They think I have a sickness that makes me reject tribute, but I am not sick, I am drowning. Every day, more gifts arrive from species trying to curry favor or show submission. Every day, I must touch objects that scream with fear and hunger for power." "Why do you touch them at all?" "Because it is my duty as Queen to personally acknowledge every offering. It is an ancient tradition, meant to show respect for our subjects." She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Instead, it has slowly destroyed my ability to feel anything positive." The Queen turned back to him and held up the wooden flute again. The warm golden light returned to her skin immediately. "Until this. Do you know what I feel when I hold this?" Tae-min shook his head. "Love. Pure, uncomplicated love. I can feel your grandfather's hands shaping the wood. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to create something beautiful for someone he cared about. I can feel you as a child, learning to play simple songs, not to impress anyone, but because music made you happy. I can feel generations of your family passing this small treasure from hand to hand, not because it was valuable, but because it carried memories." Tears were flowing down her face again, but these seemed like happy tears. "When was the last time someone gave you something just because they wanted to share joy with you?" Taemin asked gently. The queen was quiet for a long time. I cannot remember, she finally said. Every gift I have received for the past 1,000 years has wanted something in return. Even the most beautiful art pieces, the most impressive technologies, the rarest treasures, they all came with strings attached. They all said, please like us, or please do not hurt us, or please give us what we want. She sat down on the floor next to Taemin, which seemed very strange for a queen, but somehow felt natural. Your flute asks for nothing, she said, turning, the simple instrument over in her hands. It offers only what it is, a small piece of love made solid, a bridge between hearts, a reminder that beauty exists for its own sake. My grandfather used to say that music was the language of the heart, Taemin said. Your grandfather was wise. The queen looked at him with curiosity. Tell me about the colony world, 5 years ago. What did you do there that was different? Taemin thought back to that small farming world where humans and Valeth had been fighting over water rights. I listened, he said simply. Everyone else was trying to solve the problem with laws and contracts and negotiations. But I realized that both sides were scared and angry, and nobody was really hearing what the other side was saying. So you listened. I listened. I sat with the human farmers and let them tell me about their dreams for their children. I sat with the Valeth families and let them explain why the river was sacred to them. I did not try to fix anything at first. I just listened until everyone felt heard. The queen nodded slowly. And then? And then they started listening to each other. Once people feel understood, they can usually find ways to help each other. Taemin looked around at all the scattered treasures. Nobody here feels understood, do they? They all just want to prove they are worth keeping alive. Exactly. The queen's skin patterns had settled into a steady, warm glow. You are the first being in centuries to offer me something that was not asking for anything in return. You are the first to show me that love without condition still exists somewhere in this galaxy. She stood up and walked to the window again, still holding the flute. Kim Taemin, she said formally, I accept your gift. And in accepting it, I want you to know something important. She turned to face him, and her expression was serious. After accepting your gift, I understand something that I had almost forgotten. Only one human still understands what makes your species truly special, you. The next morning, Queen Ashkara took Taemin to her private gardens. This part of the palace was different from the grand halls filled with treasures. Here, everything was alive and growing. The garden was full of trees unlike anything Taemin had ever seen. Their trunks were silver and smooth, and their leaves seemed to glow with soft light. The trees grew in perfect spirals that reached high into the sky, and when the wind blew through them, they made musical sounds. These are memory. Trees, the queen explained as they walked down a path made of smooth stones. They store the experiences and knowledge of my people. Every important event in Valeth history is recorded here. Taemin looked up at the beautiful trees with wonder. They hold memories? More than memories. They hold feelings, thoughts, entire experiences. When a Valeth touches one of these trees, they can feel what their ancestors felt, know what they knew. The queen stopped beside a particularly large tree and placed her hand on its trunk. Her skin patterns immediately began flowing with complex colors. What are you feeling? Taemin asked. The day my great-great-grandmother first became queen. The joy she felt, the hope for the future, the love she had for her people. The queen's voice was soft and dreamy. She was so young then, so full of dreams about building a peaceful empire where all species could work together as equals. She took her hand away from the tree, and her expression became sad again. Those dreams died slowly over the centuries. They continued walking deeper into the garden. The queen led him to a quiet spot where a small stream flowed between the memory trees. She sat down on a stone bench and invited him to sit beside her. I want you to understand why your gift meant so much to me, she said. But first you must understand what my people have become. She pointed to a nearby memory tree. That one holds the memories of the first tribute ceremony over 3,000 years ago. A small species had asked to join our empire for protection against raiders. They brought us a beautiful sculpture made from their world's rarest crystal. My ancestor was so moved by their art that she promised to protect them forever." "That sounds like a good beginning," Taemin said. It was. But over time, the tribute ceremonies changed. Species stopped bringing gifts because they wanted to share their culture. They started bringing gifts because they were afraid of what would happen if they did not. The queen stood up and walked to another tree. When she touched it, her skin turned dark colors. "This tree holds the memory of the War of the Crimson Nebula. 800 years ago, a species tried to rebel against the Empire. We crushed them, completely destroyed 3 of their worlds, scattered their people across the galaxy. After that, every other species got the message: submit or be destroyed." Taemin felt cold, despite the warm garden air. "Your ancestors did that?" "My ancestors, my parents, myself. I have continued the same policies for 2 centuries. The queen's voice was full of pain. "Do you know what it feels like to touch gifts, brought by beings who are terrified of you? Every tribute ceremony I must handle objects that scream with fear and desperation." She walked back to the bench and sat down heavily. "The worst part is that my people have changed too. The constant exposure to fear and hatred has made us cold. My advisors no longer care about the suffering of our subjects. They see other species as resources to be managed, not beings to be respected." "But you still care," Taemin said gently. "I try to. But it gets harder every year. When you spend centuries surrounded by objects made from terror and greed, when every interaction is based on power and submission, it becomes difficult to remember what genuine kindness feels like." The queen pulled out his grandfather's flute and held it carefully. "Until this. When I touched your gift, I remembered what it felt like to receive something made with love. For the first time in centuries, I felt hope instead of darkness." She looked at him with eyes that seemed ancient and tired. "Kim Taemin, I need to ask you something. On that colony world 5 years ago, why did you help those people? What did you gain from solving their conflict?" Taemin thought about the question. "Nothing, I suppose. I was just doing my job." "No, that is not true. Your job was to file a report and move on to the next assignment. But you stayed for 3 weeks. You sat with farmers and listened to their stories. You learned about Valeth religious traditions that had nothing to do with the water dispute. Why?" Taemin remembered those long days sitting in the sun, talking, with humans and Valeth who had been suspicious and angry at first. "Because they were hurting," he said simply. "Both sides were afraid and angry, and nobody was listening to them. I could not just leave them like that." "Exactly. You helped because they needed help, not because you wanted something in return." The queen's skin patterns shifted to warm colors. "Do you realize how rare that is in this galaxy? Is it really so unusual? Kim Taemin, in 3,000 years of ruling this empire, you are the first being to come before me without asking for anything. Not protection, not trade deals, not technology, not favor. You brought me a gift that wanted nothing in return, and you offered it simply because you thought it might make me happy." The queen stood up and walked to the stream. The water was crystal clear and small fish swam lazily in the current. "My people once believed that the highest form of intelligence was the ability to understand others, to feel empathy for beings different from yourself. We thought that as species became more advanced, they would become more compassionate." She laughed bitterly. "We were wrong. The more powerful species become, the more they focus on gaining advantages over others. They develop better weapons, more complex technologies, more efficient ways to exploit resources. But they lose the ability to simply care about each other. Humans can be like that too," Taemin admitted. "Most of the people on Earth think our success depends on becoming stronger and more competitive. But not you. I am not special. I just think that understanding each other is more important than defeating each other." The queen turned back to him with an expression of wonder. "Kim Taemin, do you realize what you just said? You think understanding is more important than winning. In a galaxy where every species fights for dominance, where every relationship is based on power, you still believe in the value of simple compassion." She walked back to him and held out the wooden flute. "This is why I wanted to meet you. 5 years ago, you showed my people on that colony world something they had forgotten. That it was possible to solve conflicts without dominance, to create peace without conquest. Word of what you did eventually reached me, and I began to wonder if there might still be beings in the universe who remembered how to offer genuine friendship. And now? Now I know there is at least one. The Queen smiled, and for the first time since Taemin had met her, she looked truly happy. You have given me something more precious than any treasure in my palace. You have given me hope that relationships based on love rather than fear are still possible. She placed the flute gently in his hands. I want you to keep this, but I also want to ask you something. Will you help me remember what I have forgotten? Will you help me learn how to build an empire based on understanding rather than intimidation? Taemin looked down at his grandfather's simple gift, then back at the alien queen who ruled over 300 star systems. I will try, he said, but I do not know how to change an entire empire. Neither do I, Queen Ashkara admitted, but I think we can learn together. 3 days later, Queen Ashkara called for a gathering in the great throne room of the Palace of Echoes. Word spread quickly throughout the Crystal City that the Queen would make an important announcement. Representatives from dozens of species hurried to attend, along with all the human delegation. Taemin stood near the back of the enormous room, feeling small among all the important beings. The throne room was a masterpiece of Valith architecture, with walls that rose up like frozen, waterfalls, and a ceiling that showed moving images of the stars. The Queen's throne sat at the center, carved from a single piece of singing crystal. Admiral Lee Dong-hyuk found Taemin in the crowd. What have you been doing these past few days? He demanded in a whisper. We have barely seen the Queen, but her advisors say she has been meeting with you constantly. We have been talking, Taemin said simply. About what? You are supposed to be representing humanity's interests, not having private conversations with alien rulers. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin joined them, looking frustrated. The medical exchange proposals have not even been reviewed. What could be more important than sharing technology that could save lives? Trade Commissioner Han Kyung-soo pushed through the crowd to reach them. This is a disaster, he hissed. I heard rumors that the Queen is planning to change the entire tribute system. Do you know what that could mean for our trade agreements? Before Taemin could answer, the sound of crystal chimes filled the air. The great doors at the far end of the throne room opened, and Queen Ashkara entered. She looked different from when Taemin had first met her. The light patterns on her skin were bright and steady, flowing in colors he had learned meant determination and hope. She carried herself with new confidence as she walked to her throne. Beings of the galaxy, she said, and her musical voice reached every corner of the vast room. I have called you here to witness a change that will affect all of our worlds. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The alien representatives looked nervous. Some of them had been bringing tribute to the Valith Empire for centuries. For 3,000 years, our empire has been built on a foundation of tribute and submission. Weaker species bring us gifts to prove their loyalty. Stronger species negotiate from positions of careful respect. All relationships in our territories have been based on hierarchy and power. The Queen paused and looked out over the assembled beings. Today, that ends. The murmurs became gasps of surprise and alarm. Several alien ambassadors began talking urgently among themselves. The human delegation looked shocked. I am dissolving the tribute system, Queen Ashkara continued calmly. No longer will species be required to bring gifts to prove their worth. No longer will we measure relationships by displays of submission or demonstrations of strength. Admiral Lee grabbed Taemin's arm. What did you do? He whispered fiercely. This could ruin everything. But the Queen was not finished. In place of an empire built on fear, I propose an alliance built on understanding. Instead of tribute, I ask for friendship. Instead of demonstrations of power, I offer partnership between equals. The throne room, Eru.